Hello, I'm Roger Mixad, Executive Vice President and General Counsel of Battery Council International, a not-for-profit trade association formed in 1924 to represent the lead battery industry. BCI has member companies worldwide engaged in every facet of the industry: battery manufacturers and recyclers, marketers and retailers, suppliers of raw materials and equipment, and expert consultants. This is the first of a series of informative webinars, which will highlight the essential role lead batteries play in the American economy, the critical role lead batteries will play in a more electrified future, and the domestic sustainable infrastructure and manufacturing base underpinning the U.S. lead battery industry. Today, we're excited to launch the series by welcoming Dr. John Urey, Vice President, Exploration, Research, and Technical Development for the Doe Run Company. John, thank you for joining me today. Before we jump into our topic, can you tell us about Doe Run and your role there?
Absolutely, Roger, and thanks for having me. Doe Run Company is a privately held natural resource company with a long 157-year history. We're based in St. Louis, Missouri, but our mines and mills are in southeast Missouri, kind of near the small towns of Boss and Viburnum. We mine about 5 million tons a year of ore and produce lead, copper, and zinc concentrates, which we sell into the international markets. We also operate one of the world's largest single-site lead recycling centers, also located in Missouri, and have operations in Arizona and Washington that provide fabrication and oxide production. Our primary business is lead, and when you think lead, its dominant use, which is lead batteries, Doe Run intersects with 6 of the 8 stages of the life cycle, namely exploration, mining, milling, alloying, fabricating, and oxide production, and finally the recycling of the spent lead batteries at the end of their life to return these valuable metals back into the batteries. This is likely the best example of a circular economy for a consumer product.
Thank you. Given yours and Doe Run's long-standing engagement in this industry, maybe you could provide some background on how the U.S. mineral production industry has changed since the 1990s.
Yeah, 1990 was a big year for the United States. The United States, we were still ranked #1 in global mineral production. But if you look at us today, we're in 7th place, and we're 100% import dependent on many minerals, including 14 of which are on the critical minerals list. This list was created by the US government in 2018 when we recognized that there were a number of minerals or mineral groups, about 35 in total, which were really important to maintain US manufacturing and supply chains. 23 commodities are identified as posing the greatest supply risk to US manufacturing. Now, personally, I find it interesting to know that in total today, the US is 50% or greater import reliant on 46 mineral commodities, plus rare earths. And China is the major import source for about half of them.
So looking at those changes in the international profile, what do these shifts, in your view, mean for a low-carbon future in the United States and internationally?
The low-carbon future is coming, and there's a variety of minerals that are central to this low-carbon and renewable energy future. These are the minerals that support energy production and really energy storage. Most specifically, in my opinion, these metals are nickel, cobalt, lithium, graphite, rare earth elements, and a list that's not on the critical minerals list, which is copper. Now, today, the global battery market is about $90 billion in value. That's dominated by lead batteries as well as lithium-ion batteries, which are used for electric vehicles. By 2030, only 10 years from now, the battery market is going to grow from that $90 billion number to something approaching about $150 billion annually. And energy storage is going to about triple. So EV vehicles are just a portion of the energy storage growth, but we believe that EV sales are going to grow to about 30 million vehicles by 2030, or about 1/3 of the total share of new car sales.
Looking at that incredible growth that's coming down the road for energy storage, BCI's members are primarily in the business of producing lead batteries for applications ranging from transportation in today's internal combustion vehicles, as well as electric vehicles, and stationary storage applications for telecom, data centers, and other uses. The closed loop system is often called a perfect example of a circular economy. Can you explain what that means?
Absolutely. And I might add that no other battery technology even approaches the recycling rate of lead batteries. Today, the majority of lead used for new battery production comes from recycled lead batteries. And that's because recycling of these batteries has taken place for decades. So even though mining and processing of what we know today as primary lead is still necessary, particularly in areas of the globe where society is first adopting transportation, such as the developing areas of Asia and India. But in the US, our robust recycling of lead batteries is the perfect example of this circular economy. Batteries are manufactured domestically by some of the world's best producers and are sold either as original equipment in new cars or as replacement batteries. And at the end of their life, these batteries are collected, usually at the place where you purchase the replacement battery. Now, these spent batteries do have a lot of value, and they're delivered back to battery recyclers, just like Doe Run, where they're broken down into their components, most specifically lead and plastic. And these products can be recovered and reused over and over again. Lead batteries are the most recycled consumer product in the world, and they represent the standard for a circular economy product, with each lead battery produced containing more than 80% recycled materials.
You've talked about the sustainable nature of lead batteries, and as a trade association, it's one of the things we are most proud of in representing the lead battery industry. How do the recycling and minerals or metals requirements for lead batteries compare to those for other battery technologies?
So note that lead battery consists of materials that are domestically sourced. We're talking about the lead, the plastic, and the sulfuric acid. And the batteries can be used again and again, endlessly recycled, returning value to the domestic market. Now, if you compare that to lithium batteries, the recycling of lithium batteries has a long ways to go yet. This is at least in part because there's so many different chemistries in these sorts of batteries, and they can't be crushed in the same manner that lead batteries can be. And there are some groups that are recycling these lithium batteries, but they're not recovering the lithium. They're really just going after the cobalt and nickel so far. So if you talk to the US Department of Energy, they tell us that 15% or less of these lithium batteries are recycled today. And when you consider that one lithium-ion battery in an automobile takes about 90,000 pounds of ore to capture the minerals necessary, that's a lot of waste.
The current administration has committed itself to making the US a global leader in batteries and energy storage, manufacturing, and recycling. Obviously, minerals and metals are essential to making that happen, and preferably with a predominantly US sourced supply chain. What obstacles do you see to making that policy a reality, and what changes do you think are needed to make it come true?
The biggest challenge we have in any free economy to any sort of commerce is really uncertainty. Mining and metal production are highly capital intensive industries, and uncertainty in the process or delays create significant risk. And investment really doesn't like uncertainty. So listen, as a mining and metals company, we understand that any new venture has an element of uncertainty. And that being said, the process to obtain a mining permit for a new mine on federal lands presently has a level of unpredictability and uncertainty that stymies investment. Now, I'll get into the issues and opportunities for improvement in a minute, but first, let me assure you, I unequivocally support our clean air, water, and remediation regulatory requirements. I believe every responsible mine operator feels the same way. After all, as the operators, we live in these communities, near these mines, and want to maintain their natural beauty for the next generation. Now, let me start with permitting. mine permitting process requires involvement of multiple government agencies at both the state and federal levels, as well as with stakeholder groups. And let me tell you, it's an understatement to say that these different bodies have conflicting interests frequently. In the US, there may be 30 or more regulatory programs that could apply to mine permitting on federal lands. Now, the first step in permitting a mine in the United States can take more than 7 years. And after you add in additional permits for major mining projects, the timeline can exceed 10 years or more. In comparison, if you look at countries like Canada and Australia, they have very similar environmental standards to ours. The process there only takes about 2 years. And in a study commissioned by the National Mining Association, S&L Metals and Mining found that a typical mining project loses more than about 1/3 of its value as the result of unexpected permitting delays. The resulting higher costs and increased risks that result from a prolonged process, while it can cut the expected value of a mine in half before the production even begins. And getting underway with a mine is really only the beginning of uncertainty. Market manipulation of some commodities can also have devastating effects on access to domestic minerals, viability of supply chains. I'm a staunch supporter of free market economics, but it's clear to me that there are some situations where the American government has to get involved to protect domestic interests and domestic supply chains. Now, the most visible example of this, in my opinion, is the rare earths market. So looking at it from a big picture, the Chinese have a policy of supporting supply chains they see as strategic. Now, the most significant of these are probably copper smelting and rare earths production. I'm going to talk about rare earths a little bit right now. So through the 1990s, the Chinese methodically subsidized rare earth production to drop the price of these commodities until everybody that was non-Chinese was finally forced out of production, until the Chinese effectively controlled 100% of production and refining. And at the time, everybody thought that was great because it dropped the price of rare earths. Rare earths were inexpensive. And this was really, though, a short-term tactic of China's long-term strategy. So if you look at 2010, this is where it all started to come out. There was a trade war between Japan and China. And from that, the Chinese restricted rare earth exports and then went on and made statements about how they might not even have sufficient rare earths to export it to the other countries of the world. This immediately spurred global production in other areas producing rare earths outside of China. Closest to home, this was the historic Mountain Pass rare earths mine in California. They spent almost $2 billion there to bring the mine back online. But as soon as the trade war between China and Japan waned, China increased production again, the market tanked, and the mine's owner went into bankruptcy. As an aside, it's interesting to know that Chinese-backed capital was integral to bringing the mine back out of bankruptcy. And it's also even more interesting to know where all of the Mountain Pass concentrates are sent for processing today, and that's China. I think it's safe to say that the rare earths market is not open and it's not free. And for the US supply chain to have security in markets like these, I really believe governmental support will be required.
Thank you. It's clear that the U.S. has some ground to make up on these rare earths and other materials. What do you see as the key areas of focus that can help the U.S. reclaim its position as a global leader in mineral extraction and processing?
So I'd like to break this down into 4 different areas, Roger. These are people, permitting, processing, and permissions. First of which is people. It's an investment in the collegiate mining and metallurgy programs. We need these programs to train the next generation of the mining workforce. The second is permitting. We need to establish a clear, consistent, and transparent path to the permitting of new mines and processing facilities. Remember that in the United States, it takes 10 years or sometimes more to permit a new mine, compared to just 2 years in Australia and Canada. Next area is processing. we need to have processing facilities in the United States. This includes smelters, by the way. Finally, is permissions. We need to redefine the industry's relationship with government and regulators such that we can work in greater collaboration towards a sustainable mineral and metal production. To sum it up, I would say that with improved cooperation among stakeholders, increased research funding, and by following the circular economy example of lead batteries, the US can regain domestic supply chain security and advance a low carbon and renewable energy future.
Thank you, John, for sharing your insights and thoughts and information from Doe Run on this important topic. It's clear to me that the US has a robust mining and metals industry ready and willing to build towards a more sustainable and domestic supply chain for batteries. And we hope that all of you, your colleagues, your competitors, and our federal partners will commit towards building towards that goal. And thank you to our audience for tuning in. I hope you'll join us as we continue to explore related subjects over the coming months. You can sign up for the series by emailing us at info@batterycouncil.org. And you can find more information about sustainable lead batteries and our domestic supply chain by visiting BCI's Essential Energy Everyday website. Thank you and have a great day.